This video examines the landmark case, Whitney versus California, a 1927 mock trial case that explores the tension between free speech and national security during the Red Scare. The case began in 1920 when the state of California prosecuted Charlotte Anita Whitney, an activist, for helping organize the Communist Labor Party. The state alleged the party advocated criminal syndicalism, violating a 1919 state act. The trial became the foundation for important free speech debates. Amid post-World War I unrest and fear of Bolshevism, California enacted the Criminal Syndicalism Act. Whitney attended the party's founding convention. Although she opposed violence, the state argued the party's national platform endorsed revolutionary action, leading to her arrest and charge. Whitney versus California highlights the conflict between democratic values and fear-driven policymaking. The prosecution of a nonviolent activist for her associations reminds us how easily dissent can be criminalized and the crucial need to safeguard free expression against widespread hysteria. The Red Scare fueled the 1919 Criminal Syndicalism Act, targeting labor radicals and communists. The law criminalized advocating violence for political change. Whitney's personal rejection of violence was ignored, as the state focused on the Communist Labor Party's theoretical endorsement of revolutionary action. Whitney was convicted in 1922. The California Supreme Court affirmed the conviction, prioritizing public safety over free speech. While the U.S. Supreme Court later dismissed the case, it remains a pivotal example of how fear can erode the First Amendment. Later rulings, like Brandenburg versus Ohio, overturned this legacy. Now, let's examine the prosecution side of Whitney versus California. The prosecution argued that the Communist Labor Party's platform endorsed revolutionary mass action. They claimed Whitney knowingly helped organize the party, and that the Criminal Syndicalism Act prohibited assisting groups advocating violence. Regardless of personal intent, membership alone was deemed sufficient for conviction. The prosecution's strongest arguments included the threat of criminal syndicalism and the precedent of Schenck versus U.S. They emphasized Whitney's leadership role and that the law was a necessary security measure against unrest, criminalizing advocacy of violence to achieve political change. The prosecution presented 5 key elements to unmask the, quote, dangerous idea they saw in the Communist Labor Party. These included witness testimonies and the alleged evidence of a radical pamphlet. Prosecution witness Elias Stone of the California Labor Department testified on the intent of the Syndicalism Act. He argued the law banned organizations promoting violence for economic goals and focused on the party's alleged advocacy of sabotage. Undercover agent Rivenhall claimed he infiltrated Whitney's party meetings. His vivid testimony suggested the group discussed revolutionary violence, which the prosecution used to validate the charges against the defendant. Economics professor Voss compared the party's platform to the Syndicalism Act. He argued that the party's underlying ideology implicitly endorsed revolutionary violence, lending academic weight to the prosecution's claims, though defense experts later challenged his interpretations. Fugitive witness Marla Dixon, a former party member, claimed American radicals were brutally terroristic. Prosecutors used her emotional testimony to humanize the state's case, while the defense questioned her erratic testimony and overall credibility. The red pamphlet was an anonymous exhibit used by the prosecution. It advocated industrial sabotage. Prosecutors claimed it was a template for the Communist Labor Party's actions, while the defense suggested it was planted evidence for state entrapment. The defense focused on political association and free expression. They argued Whitney opposed violence, and the local party branch did not advocate criminal acts. They contended that punishing membership without proving intent or action was an unconstitutional violation of free speech and association. The defense argued the Syndicalism Act was an overbroad, vague law that violated free speech by stifling political dissent. They asserted that passive membership alone could not justify criminal punishment, and that the alleged clear and present danger was absent. The defense presented 5 key figures to defend freedom and challenge the state's narrative. These witnesses provided context for the political climate and offered expert analysis on the law's vagueness and the party's true intentions. Constitutional scholar Dr. Eleanor Whitman argued the Syndicalism Act suppressed political dissent. She cited Gitlow versus New York to narrow the definition of sedition, pleading for clarity over government censorship. Labor organizer Calvin Reed testified that Whitney's group focused on nonviolent strikes and provided documents supporting a nonviolent textile strike. His testimony aimed to undermine the prosecution's, quote, terrorist narrative with facts about their actions. Linguist Professor Morn analyzed the act's vague definition of syndicalism. She argued the law wrongly conflated industrial unionism with anarchist violence. Her compelling, academic argument became a central rallying cry for the defense. Abuela Rosa, a 70-year-old church volunteer, humanized Whitney as a nonviolent activist, speaking of her role in organizing rent strikes and feeding the hungry. However, the skeptical judge dismissed her testimony as mere sentiment, not law. The mysterious witness, Mildred, claimed state agents instructed her to type the incriminating, quote, textile manifesto, suggesting entrapment. The judge dismissed her claims as paranoia, but this testimony cast doubt on the origin of key evidence. The defense argued the Criminal Syndicalism Act violated the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. They claimed the law was too vague and overbroad, and that punishing mere association infringes upon fundamental liberty rights. The defense also challenged the law under the Equal Protection Clause. They argued the act unfairly targeted specific political groups and was unequally applied to suppress radical left-wing ideologies, making it unconstitutional. Finally, the defense argued the law directly violated Whitney's First Amendment rights. They stressed that the state could not outlaw abstract political advocacy and that Whitney's rights to association and free speech were compromised. We have now examined the prosecution and defense arguments in this significant mock trial case, Whitney versus California.